Welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. I'm your host, Elvis. And today with me is Becca Froh, who is a productivity coach. So as we were just talking last few minutes, I think I'm going to need some of her advice as well. So stick on. Now, before we start, a word from our sponsor, Terra Vitality. You can find it in the description below. And for now, we offer organic t-shirts designed by some of our previous guests. We also have some products that are made to remind you to remember your dreams. And we're currently working on some services, personal training and otherwise. So if you're interested, have a look at the description below. Now we are also working together with Project Child Save. So part of the profit from Terra Vitality, especially from the courses, goes directly to Project Child Save. And if you want to donate, there's a link in the description below. All of the donations go directly to missions that rescue kids. All the people involved are volunteers, so no one's taking money into their pockets. So make sure you check it out. Thank you very much for donating. And now let's get into a podcast. So Becca, really happy to have you on.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Elvis. And actually, it's funny. I love your opening. So, the whole basis for Imagine You Academy is based on Henry David Thoreau's quote to go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life that you have imagined. So, I absolutely love that we are on the same wavelength there.
Oh yeah, totally. Like um, the idea of Tower Vitality is obviously the t-shirts. That's just like the very beginning of it. Well, actually, I forgot to mention you guys can also join our community, which I'm building. It's both on Facebook and mainly on Telegram. There's going to be a link on the website, so check it out. So yeah, like I was saying, the main idea of Tower Vitality is to help people to counter all the negative forces in society right now, so they can be happy, healthy, and more free. Which means also, obviously, if you're not healthy enough, then you're not free. You're depending on
Yes.
some big pharma and all the rest of it. If you're not happy,
Yes,
then
exactly.
also you're gonna fall for a lot of things that are out there. And financial freedom, that's also going to be a big part of Terra Vitality and
Yes.
helping out with that, so that you can actually do what follow your dreams, basically.
Yes. I love that so much.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about what you're doing and how did you get to where you are now.
Absolutely. So, I am a productivity coach, and what that means is that I help people from their quarter life crisis. If you're over 25, then you know exactly what that is. Through your midlife crisis, if you're in your 40s, you know exactly what that is, let me tell you. And all the existential crises in between. And so, whether you're getting ready to make a big move across the world, or you're working to get promoted at work, you're trying to find a new job, or you just really need more confidence. You're trying to work on your relationships, work on your work. There is no work life balance anymore, especially in our world, but there is work life integration. So, really, how to be effective in integrating your work and your life together so that you don't go absolutely crazy and you don't get depressed. Because again, it's all about happiness and health, especially mental health and, financial freedom too. And then I had just published the book called Are You Okay by Becca Froh, which is on Amazon. And that book is truly a love letter to women about you're doing better than you think. I know that you're stressed out. I know that you're tired. I know that some days you feel like you just can't go on and you're a shit mom, but I tell you what, you're not. Um, you are doing so much better than you think. And instead of judging each other, which is what women are really excellent at, we really need to support each other instead. And so I came to this because I found out early on in life that I really wanted to help people, and my purpose was to help others live the life that they have imagined. The first time I learned this, my aunt is a portrait artist. Her name was Maxine Pendry. She did portraits of Christ and things like that. And she asked me for some help one day when I was about 11 years old. And there's this family in town, we lived in a small town, who could not read. The mom, the dad, the three kids, one of which was in my grade, could not read. So I worked with them every single day for like 3 months. And I helped them all learn how to read together. And it was so special. I'll never forget the first time that dad read a newspaper. I cried. His wife cried. Everybody cried because he was in his 40s and he had never read before. And here he was reading the newspaper. And now I realize we're on a podcast, and some people probably have never even read a newspaper because that's just not a thing anymore. But for people who remember what newspapers are, that's that's a pretty big deal. And so I went to I went to college, I went to business school, and then I went on and got my master's degree in adult learning and organizational performance. I have um, uh, I have done seminars. I have worked with corporations. I have taught college classes. I have built college classes and did all that curriculum design. So I really did all the bits and pieces to learn all the areas that would be important to help people, plus the tech and business side. And then about a year ago, I launched Imagine You Academy. I actually just hired our sales director. So, hi, Mike, welcome. And it's his first day today. So, and here we are.
Yeah, sounds great. So how can we be more productive then?
How can you be more productive? Okay, well, it depends on in what area you're thinking of. So, first of all, we can talk about time management a little bit. Have you heard of the Pomodoro method?
Perhaps it rings a bell.
Okay, so the Pomodoro method was created by this college professor in Italy back in the 80s, and he was trying to master focus for studying, for working, for researching. And so he got one of those little, I don't know if you remember the kitchen timers that look like
Hmm.
tomatoes from way back from the 80s. So he had one of those. It went for 25 minutes. And so he set the timer for 25 minutes, would not let anybody disturb him, and just gave 100% total focus to a particular task at hand for 25 minutes. And then took a 5 minute stretch brain break and figured out if he did three of those in a row and then a fourth Pomodoro, the 25-minute segment, followed by a 30-minute break, then he was more productive. He was like 6 times more productive than he was without the timer.
Mm.
So that is definitely my number one productivity tip is to set a timer for 25 minutes, do three 25-minute segments with a 5-minute break, and then do a fourth 25-minute segment and then take a 30-minute break. So it's about 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, I tell you what, I accomplish more than otherwise I would all day because I have music turned on, I'm jamming out, and I have my do not disturb on. I'm not doing absolutely anything except the task at hand. And I can get curriculum written for one of my courses, and gosh, I can get at least the outline and the modules done in 2 hours, really, when normally it would take me a full day to do that. So that is the number one productivity tip, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty good. Those breaks are quite important in between as well. Like I've heard that even when you're doing something for like, well, maybe 20 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that, you can take a small break where you just don't do anything at all. Or you can
Yes.
just
Hmm.
even close your eyes if you want to, or not, even just for a few seconds, because apparently your brain just goes through everything that you've done or learned. For example, it depends what you do.
Yeah.
It goes through it in like fast forward, like so really quickly, kind of like when you
Yeah.
sleep or something like that. So it really helps a lot.
It does. After you learn something new or after your brain has been heavily engaged, you absolutely have to take those brain breaks. Otherwise, the learning and the information doesn't soak in. And even if you're not trying to learn something, you're just doing something, having that downtime, like you always get your best ideas in the shower or when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's because you're finally calm. your brain can finally process. And so giving your brain that time to process is where your best ideas come from. What I recommend on those short breaks is 2 minutes of just that breathing time, and then 3 minutes of what I call an exercise snack. So instead of having a snack, you have an exercise snack. So that might be busting out 50 jumping jacks. I don't do push-ups because I have a bad shoulder, but it could be busting out push-ups. You could be doing sit-ups.
A
You
bit of
can run in
stretching.
place. Yeah, stretching, definitely stretching, because you're getting that oxygen pumping through your blood, and that's just going to help you further to focus for your next segment.
Yeah, that's quite important, especially if you're stuck behind a desk all the time or behind a computer, because even just sitting for 1 hour or a few hours a day, it's a health risk. It's not good for
Well,
you.
sitting is the new
Yeah,
smoking.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's well, and plus you get that hunch, and then you get that low back, and you have to
Yeah.
stretch out anyway to fix the low back. So if you just preemptively stretch, then you won't have that issue. Another thing you can do to help with the stretching and the posture is to have a backless chair. So I'm sitting in a backless
Hmm.
chair, and you just, because it forces you to sit up. Otherwise, the hunching where you can hunch against a chair, hunching here is really, really uncomfortable. So it's forcing you to have that posture to breathe correctly. And then that helps you also to get the most oxygen production through your body, and you burn more calories that way.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's another good tip that you have? You said the window.
Oh, another
Yeah.
good tip. Let's see. So, have you heard of flow state?
Yeah.
Okay. So, are you familiar with flow state?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's a few steps into flow state, and that is optimal productivity. So, really, the original wisdom is that to become an expert, it takes 10,000 hours to do something. So if you do art for 10,000 hours, if you paint, then you're going to be better than most of the world. You're going to be statistically in the top 1% of performers if you spend that 10,000 hours. But if you go into flow state, you can reach that productivity much, much faster, and you can become an expert in things much, much faster. So, the first part of flow state is to prepare. You need to know exactly what you're going to be working on. Work on something that matters, work on something that you're interested in, and make sure that you have all of your materials together. You let your family know, hey, don't bother me. I'm going to spend 2 hours working on deep work. I absolutely cannot be disturbed. And then you can get all your materials together, and you can say, all right, now I'm ready to go. And then you get your water, you get your snack, and you want to do a little ritual to get your mind into the flow state method. So what I do is I get my caffeine, and I do some stretching. I have a light snack, and then I sit in my favorite spot in the house and have all my materials, and that's my ritual. So then I'm ready to get into flow state. But you're going to have a struggle first. You're going to want to check your phone, which I'm guilty of too. Want to dink around and do other things. But once you push past that struggle, you keep working on the project that you're supposed to be working on. Finally, your brain kind of lets go. And you're like, all right, I'm done fighting. I guess I will do the work. I'm done procrastinating, right? And then once your mind allows you to let go, then you can enter flow state, which is the top productivity. You have no idea how much time passes. You're just flowing, you're in the zone, you're typing like crazy. Or if you're a musician, everything is just going together, everything is just working. Maybe if you're an athlete, you're hitting all the baskets. I'm not a sports ball person, but you know what I mean. And so everything is just working. Your brain is making connections 4 times faster than it would be out of flow state, and you're really, really in the zone. So that's where the Pomodoro method can come into play. You can force yourself into flow state through doing those 4 Pomodoros over the 2 hours. Um, Now, afterwards, you have had this huge dopamine rush. So it feels awesome. It feels amazing to be in flow state. But then afterwards, you kind of feel let down, right? And you have that low feeling. But it's important to rest. It's important to repair because if you don't let your mind rest and repair, just like we were talking about before, it's not going to make those additional creative connections. But also, you can't sustain, just like you can't sustain running a 6 minute mile forever. That's why a 6 minute mile is a big deal because that's not sustainable. Flow state is also not sustainable. You have to recover. If you can take a quick 20 to 30-minute nap after you do a flow session, that's absolutely ideal. Um, so that is, yeah, that's my best advice for flow state. You have got to recover. Now, I will say you can buy some things over the counter or over Amazon that help with that dopamine production. And so if you need to get into flow state, then you could get some of those vitamin helpers and things like a B12.
Mhm. Can you explain to some people who might not know what this flow state is?
Absolutely. So flow is really the state of optimal performance where when you're doing an activity, you're losing track of time. It could be anything, even mopping the floor. So this is my best anybody suggestion, right? You put on your very favorite upbeat music, put your headphones on, you rock out, you grab your mop and you grab your dishwashing stuff and you just start going at it. You dance around because it's always better to do a boring task with a little bit of fun. So you're dancing, you're mopping, and all of a sudden a half an hour has gone by and you're like, where'd the time go? Wow, my floor is spotless. I have no idea where the time went. I was absolutely having fun, and I never have fun while I do chores. What was that? That's flow state.
Mhm.
So if you've ever experienced that, or if you got into reading a book and all of a sudden 4 hours had passed and the book is done, and you're like, wait a minute, how did I finish this book? I'm so glad about, Sir Malcolm and his tight abs, and that was a fantastic story. But I like dirty romance novels. but, but oh my gosh, where'd the time go? Where'd those 4 hours go? You just entered flow state, and so it's easier to enter flow state on fun stuff like Fabio and his raging whatever. But
Can imagine. And what kind of tip do you have for people who constantly say, "I don't have time"? Because I used to work as a personal trainer, and now through Tell Vitality, I'm kind of getting back into it. And many times people come, you give them some advice, and they're like, "Oh, I just don't have time for it."
well, first of all, everybody has time for the things that are most important to them.
That's a good point.
We all have this. It is. It
Yeah.
truly is. I mean, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So um, think about Steve Jobs. He had the same 24 hours in a day that we have. Think about Elon Musk running, and I know he's a character that'll kind of split the room, but he's running a couple of companies and he has still a family and things like that. He has the same 24 hours in a day that we do. So really the best thing to do is first decide is, are you saying that you don't have enough time because you don't want to make time for that activity? And if you don't want to make time for it, then that's when you need to start exploring, why don't I want to make time for that? Why is my health not important? Why am I not important enough to myself to make time for working out and for exercise? But if you really think that you don't have time, then what you do is you track your schedule from midnight to midnight. That means you track everything from bathroom breaks to work to video games to intimacy. You track every single thing you are doing. And then after a week, you review it. And you're going to say, oh my God, I spent 15 hours playing SimCity. That is, and it was small chunks, but that is 15 hours I could have spent exercising when I thought I didn't have time. Well, let me allocate some of those SimCity hours to actually stretching, to actually getting enough sleep, to actually doing an exercise routine. And so, really having people to do that midnight to midnight tracker for a full week and make them be honest with themselves. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll see how much time you waste because we all waste
Yeah, exactly. No one's 100%.
time.
You know,
Oh
like
no, I'm
making
definitely
use of
not either.
every second in a day. Like people even ask me, like, how do you keep track of everything that you do? You know, and I'm like, I'm always like, man, I could do even better than this. Like because I know like where I waste my time and everything, and it's like constant struggle trying to be more productive and making better use of time.
Exactly. Well, and so you say that you know where you waste time, but are you truly wasting time during that period, or are you relaxing? Are you giving yourself brain breaks? Because relaxing and brain breaks are incredibly important. You have to make that part of your routine, or you're not going to be as productive.
That's a good point. Yeah, which is it's gotta be. I
You
guess
know,
a person has to be careful of what kind of activity you choose for the brain break, right? I mean, it's a difference if you just scroll
it
through TikTok rather than go for a walk or meditate or eat something.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you're scrolling through TikTok, then you're actually making your brain more tired. You're making your
Hmm.
eyes more tired because you're staring at that screen, you're scrolling, you're thinking, you're getting different feelings like jealousy or comparison or even, even laughter, but that's taking up energy that could be used someplace else if you're scrolling. But if you're doing something intentional like meditation, I mean, my favorite monk, Ajahn Brahm from the Buddhist Society of Western Australia says, "What are you doing tomorrow?" Nothing. Oh, so I see you're busy. it's it's okay to do nothing. If you're doing nothing intentionally, if you're meditating and you're going within to get that brain break, that's very healthy for you. And you should be taking time to do nothing.
Hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, people these days they don't really know many times how to not do anything. It's like whenever
No,
there's a moment, pick up the phone or something like that. And I think that's quite important to be able to just sit there with you on your own, just you and your thoughts.
that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people are terrified of being alone with their thoughts.
Yeah. Actually, I just recently
Yeah.
I saw a short video on YouTube where I think the question was I think it was like this: is there anything scarier than just being on your own with your own thoughts? And most people they were like, no. But there was just one guy that was like, yeah, bears in artillery.
Oh my gosh. And see, to me, being alone with my own thoughts, that's a great time. That is a great day. If I could just spend that time alone. In fact, I make sure that I carve out time to do it every single day. Just nothing. No phone, no TV, no music, no nothing, just silence. It's amazing.
Yeah, but to some extent, it might be also a problem of the society that we're living in that just wants us to be productive all the time. And
They do.
there's they don't put much value into any kind of introspection or meditation stuff like these, where you're just on your own with your own thoughts.
I know. I think that's too bad that because really, you were talking about not relying on big pharma earlier.
Hmm.
And if more people would take time to meditate, to go within, to really work through their stuff, because we all have stuff, then we wouldn't rely as much on big pharma, truly. There's an exercise that I like to do when it's hard to get your mind to focus down when you want to meditate but you can't. I picture that I'm sitting at the base of a really large tree and my feet are barefoot in the grass and my toes are feeling the grass and there's this gentle river in front of me. So I used to live in Colorado when I was little, and that's a real scene that I used from when I lived, and I used to go in the Rocky Mountains. And so picture this babbling brook in the Rocky Mountains, and every thought that passes by is passing by in the river. It's passing by in the Colorado River, and you watch it and you acknowledge the thought. Yep, that's pretty hard. Yep, my boss did that. Yep, I don't like that. Okay. Now I'm watching it float down the river, and you watch the thought until it floats away. And you just sit there for as long as you have those thoughts that are driving you crazy. You just watch those thoughts float down the river until you feel better. So
Yeah,
that's a little exercise people could try.
that's pretty much meditation. I mean,
It
and
is.
the
It
problem
is.
is that over here in the West, we always tend to accept or reject something, including our own
Yes.
thoughts. Either we cling onto them
Yeah.
and spiral all the way from one thought to the other constantly, or we reject something. And it's not just
Yes.
internally, but also externally.
It
Many
is.
times because of this, we don't even listen to other people, what they got to say.
Right.
It's like, oh, he's a Trump supporter. I'm not going to listen to anything he's got to say. And also the other way around, it's also a symptom of it.
Exactly.
But the way you explained it, I mean, that's first thing that came to my mind is when I was in my 20s, I started, yeah, from late teens throughout my 20s, I started reading more books about philosophy and Buddhism, stuff like that. And at some point,
Mm-hmm.
I came across also Dzogchen, which is a philosophy from Tibet. It's not
Mm-hmm.
technically you can be Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu, whatever. And you can still practice Dzogchen within that. So one of the basis of it is the meditation is basically letting your thoughts spontaneously self-liberate. You know, you don't know where those
Okay.
thoughts come from.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter really. You just observe them, and then you just let them go.
Yep. I absolutely love that. And if you're not quite ready to let them go, one of the exercises I have people do is to put things in a box. If you're not ready to let it go, you just put it in a box and you put the box away. So, for example, that childhood trauma, okay, you don't have to let go of it if you're not ready to let go of it, but you put it in a box and it goes away. You have your boss that won't get off your back, you put her in a box, put it away. Your mother in law in a box, in the basement, under the cat litter box. No. You must not have a mother in law.
No, no. Well, I can imagine. My dad told us some horror stories there, so
I bet,
yeah.
I bet, I bet.
It's fine that you bring up the box actually, because I'm not sure if you heard about this. It's called this technique called hemisync. It was something that
Mm-hmm.
actually there's a document from the CIA which I haven't read through entirely yet. It's quite interesting because it's basically saying how the universe is a hologram, you know, and basically says how we can, through our consciousness, consciously affect the external reality externally, and it's an interesting document. And there's some tapes made by the Monroe Institute that come with it,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of designed to for you to lower your brain activity or your brain waves to alpha, theta, and down there. So then you
Mm-hmm.
can even like do astral projection and stuff. And
Yes.
I was listening to it at one point. It's quite interesting. You got different tones, and but then something I've heard something about. So I was like, I better take a break from it. But at the beginning, there was this technique with the box actually. You relax and
Mm-hmm.
you get all these sounds, and this voice tells you to imagine a box right next to you. It's very heavy, nothing can escape you or something. You open the lid, you gather all the negative thoughts, emotions, whatever is bothering you, right? And then you put it into a box, close it, and then just let it go. And then
Yep.
you continue with all the exercises.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I absolutely love that. So I've read that full CIA document.
Hmm.
I haven't gone through the full heliosync, but it's all of that is absolutely real. I believe that
Yeah.
100%. I will say so first. So in the box scenario, I like to set the box on fire personally. You,
Take it to the next
I
step.
like to set it on fire. I like to watch it burn. I like I like to watch it float off in smoke. So I set the box on fire, but you can just let the box go if if you don't want to set it on fire. But astral projection, I love astral projection. It's it is so much fun. And it's I would say it's life changing. It makes you think about the world in a different way. When my husband and I were dating, he didn't believe in astral projection. I said, "That's okay. That's okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And he called me at 6 o'clock in the morning. He goes, "I had this dream, but it was so realistic. And it was like you were right in the room with me. And this is what you were wearing. And this is what you said to me." And I just started cracking up. I said, "Guess what? Astral projection's a thing." I astral projected to you last night. He's like, "Oh, it is a thing." So, so he didn't believe me until I went and did astral projection and visited him in the astral, and he actually experienced it. Then he's like, "Oh, I get it now. Okay, I'll stop making fun of you."
It's funny.
So some people just have to see.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't expect we would end up talking about this actually on this podcast. 'Cause you never mention anything like that. But honestly, like this entire year, it's like full of this stuff for me. But oh
Really?
yeah, paranormal, and I already like end of last year, beginning of this year, I did a few episodes that were mostly about the paranormal. Had a dream interpreter whom I met in Senegal when I was there in February. Then I got to know some other psychics and paranormal investigators. I met a friend who's also quite gifted, and so yeah, um, yeah. I tend to be like, I think that I'm almost like a magnet, that I just come across people who have had some kind of experiences or some gifts, and kind of collecting all the you know their experience, and it's super interesting. I also got into the habit of asking people whether they experienced something paranormal in the past or so, and most of the time they tell you something.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's probably because you're vibrating at this higher level. And so when you're vibrating at a certain level, you attract others to you that are vibrating at the same
Yeah,
level. So probably, you're talking about people who can't hear you necessarily or are just waiting for their turn, to talk. Well, those people aren't vibrating at your same level. They're vibrating at this lower level. And so they really can't hear you because they're not in alignment. But um, yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that you're getting into the woo 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 because the woo woo. Well, I love the woo woo. It's my favorite.
yeah. And to be fair, it's not even that woo woo. I mean, there's some good research out there, and just people's experiences. Like the people
Yeah.
that I've spoken to. I mean, I was saying this on a previous podcast as well. Like my BS meter is pretty good these days. So
Yeah.
when you're talking to some people, you can tell if they're just making stuff up or something like that. But
Oh yeah.
people that I've spoken to, I can genuinely tell that they were being honest.
Oh yeah.
And even like some of the things that I've been told by some by this medium that I had some seances with. Just recently, I had a podcast, I guess on my podcast, Nicole Starbuck. I think by the time this
Hmm.
podcast is out, this other episode is going to be already out. She did
Okay.
a reading for me, like a very quick one on the podcast, because
Hmm.
she like tapped into the Akashic records, and then she told me about
Yes.
some of them past lives, and it was really spot on, like in like some of the themes in my life. And then she like, yeah, in terms of money, like back home from, I mean, spot on. She had no vein
That
really.
is That is amazing. I love hearing those stories and I love hearing about the Akashic Records. I am not highly skilled in the Akashic Records at all. I have books, I have cards, I'm learning, I'm working on it, but it's not an area of expertise, but I absolutely love hearing those stories.
Yeah, same here. Like even also when I was in San Diego, we went to the old cemetery in Old Town San Diego, and
Mm-hmm.
Didi, my friend, who was also on this podcast, she took
Mm-hmm.
3 pictures of my friend, and there's definitely something on one of them, like the bottom left. I can show you later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was another picture that I took that, according to, I show it to my medium, and she was like, "That's an orb." I'm like,
Yep.
I'm still not quite sure whether it is that or whether it was just an artifact of the lens. Because my previous phone, sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
was like a source of light. It creates a bit of like a, you know, artifact there.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But there was definitely something there in the cemetery. And I met someone who also had
Yeah.
experiences in the area. And yeah, just lots of stuff like these happening this year.
Oh, Oh, it's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
So my daughter, who's turning 17 next week,
Hmm.
when she was 3, she had this imaginary friend named Kate. I thought, okay, all right, imaginary friend, cool, cool, cool. And then Kate seemed to know a lot. And then one day, Carmen came to me and said, "Mom, Kate wanted me to meet her friend Cheryl Ann." And I just stopped. I dropped what I was holding and I'm like, "Excuse me?" So Cheryl Ann is my aunt. She died when she was 3 years old in a car accident back in the 1950s. So I had never met Cheryl Ann. I had never spoken about Cheryl Ann because why would I talk about
Mm.
some family member who died at 3, to my 3 year
Yeah.
old, and this happened in the 50s? Like, there's no way I'd be. And she goes, "Yeah, I met Cheryl Ann, and she had curly hair and blue eyes." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I had a family member send me a picture of her. She goes, "Yeah, that's her. That's Cheryl Ann." And she had seen my aunt who died in the 50s.
That's crazy.
And they played together. They played together like for years until she was like 6 or 7, and then Cheryl Ann stopped coming around. Now I have a son who just turned 4. I know, very spread apart. Don't do that. 17 and 4,
You do
bad
you.
idea. But when he was about 3 and a half, he doesn't speak as well, but he said, "Sha'an, Sha'an." And he could pick out her picture too. She visited both my kids. So wild.
Yeah, and this
So wild. So some people think it's scary, but I think it's comforting.
can be. Like when I had some of
Mm-hmm.
these seances, so over the last, it's gonna be almost a year now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was only 3 of them, but on each one of them, supposedly it was my dad who came through. There was other people as
Okay.
well, and some people can say that it's scary, but it kind of helped me as well because he passed away. He
Mm-hmm.
passed away very quickly, suddenly, like no one expected
Sorry.
it. It's okay, and
Oh,
I was not in country at that point. But hearing from him and whatever happened on the seances, it kind of helped a bit, actually.
good.
Yeah,
I think it is comforting if you can know that your ancestors are there, they're looking out for you, they're still around, and they can still give you that wisdom. There's a lot of comfort in that. And I think there's also comfort because people worry so much about dying. But I don't think death is scary. I think it's just a transition.
yeah,
And you're talking about the Helios and the CIA files, and whether I don't exactly know what the deal is. I don't think any of us know whether we're living in a simulation, whether it's yeah, whatever the case may be. But there, we can still connect with those who have transitioned, who have passed on, and so there is something there. There is, so we do continue. Our soul still continues. So that should show people that death isn't scary. I think you should still be the best person that you should be. And, I think that heaven and hell were probably created back in the 1500s when people behaved badly and they didn't want people to behave badly. So it was a way to control the population very effectively, I might add. But there, you're not going to go to hell if you do something bad, but your life is going to be hell. And then what happens afterwards? Are there repercussions? I mean, we don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's not a fiery pit. That's just me. But
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we should admit that there's a lot more evidence pointing into some kind of a survival of consciousness after the physical death, rather than saying
yes,
that when you die, it's just like turning off a computer. I mean, there's
right.
actually just an assumption, and there's not much evidence for it. Whereas, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's a good channel on YouTube that I started following for the last I don't know how many months, and they just post one after the other interviews with people who had near-death experiences,
Yes.
and most of them are just super positive. Like when they come on the
Mm-hmm.
outside, it's just amazing. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
small percentage of people who do have some kind of a hellish experience or something like that. Even, for example,
Mm-hmm.
Ibn Alexander. You
Mm-hmm.
heard of him, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
those who don't know, he was I think he was a, hold on, brain surgeon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't believe in these kind of things, but then some kind of I don't know, there's meningitis or something like that attacked his brain, and basically his brain totally shut down apart from like the most basic functions. So he could not
Oh
have
my gosh.
any conscious experience,
Mm-hmm.
experience something, because literally
Right.
those parts of his brain were just shut down entirely. And
Yeah.
despite that, he had this wonderful and transformative experience, which did start off almost like with a hellish experience where it wasn't him. He was
Mm-hmm.
like in the soil underneath the roots and just struggling through it. So,
Ooh.
well, after that, he was just like flying over this wonderful landscape, and he was like the spot on a butterfly's wing, and he was all of that, and it's wonderful. And just the fact that he had this experience that got me thinking, like, how is this possible when my brain was totally offline, basically, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and even in like Tibetan Buddhism, they also
Yeah.
say, I think this is a misconception that when you die, you go to a certain place, whether it's hell
Right.
or if there is like a physical space that has its own existence somewhere elsewhere, just not here.
Exactly.
It's it again. It's how we experience the world around us. We tend to think that we are
Mm-hmm.
a localized beings within a vast universe,
It's
and
true.
then we extend it also to what happens after dying. That you go to a certain place, but it's more like I always say this on this podcast. But it's more like the other way around. Everything exists
Mm-hmm.
exists within consciousness. So
Yes.
even when in Buddhism, they say you go through these different bardos after you die,
Mm-hmm.
and what you see, you need to recognize that those are projections of your own mind, and you can transcend them at any point, and you can go back to the source at any point.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. So, are you of the mind that we are all one consciousness and we're all different projections of the same consciousness, or do you think that we are separate? I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering. I always like to hear what other people think.
It seems to me more likely that there is just one single consciousness that just presents itself through variety of beings. Because
I,
if you like I had experiences. Now this was using psychedelics, but people even without psychedelics who just meditated tend to have pretty much same
Hmm.
experiences where
Hmm.
where your ego dissolves entirely. Which ego is the barrier between
Yes.
me and you, right? I know this is me and
Yeah.
this is not
Hmm.
me, right, outside, but
Exactly.
with all psychedelics and the meditation, all that stuff, it breaks down all the barriers. So the barriers between me and you, past, present, future, all that gets dissolved. And I had these
Hmm.
experiences where I just dissolve into this soaring infinity, this endless thing that was just loving, and you were just powered to something much greater. So if you listen to so many people talking about these things, about their experiences, it seems more likely that it's just like one unified field of consciousness, and
Yep.
we are just uh, part of something bigger.
I agree. Was that ayahuasca?
No, no, mostly
No.
mushrooms, also
Okay.
LSD,
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, so a lot of people have that same experience with ayahuasca. I haven't tried it,
ayahuasca.
but gosh, yeah, ayahuasca,
Yeah.
sorry. um, yeah, I haven't tried it, but I heard that that's what you do, that's what happens, and it's just amazing.
Well, it differs from person to person what happens there. Everyone's different. Some people, when they do ayahuasca, apparently they only just get like one single message, and that's
Yeah.
what they need. Psychedelics in general, they give you what you need rather than what you want. You know, and they
Yep.
also have a tendency to make you more of what you already are in some ways, but depends. And technically, actually, all this stuff that we are talking about, NDEs, meditation, ayahuasca, LSD, mushrooms, it might be all just the same thing. What it comes down to is
Hmm.
DMT. Because,
Yes.
yeah,
Yep. Absolutely.
it has been proven now that the human brain does create actually large amounts of DMT, dimethyltryptamine,
Hmm.
which is the most
Hmm.
most potent psychedelic known to humans, and every mammal and the plant kingdom is full of it, right?
Hmm.
So it's been proven that it exists in quantities comparable to serotonin or dopamine in our brains. A lot of it is also in the
Hmm.
part in the visual cortex. So
Hmm.
it probably plays a very big role in constructing reality and the way we perceive it. Now,
Hmm.
NDEs, it's there's an argument that someone dies when the consciousness enters also the baby at who knows at what point. And there's
Hmm.
a big dump of DMT, right?
Hmm.
Now, ayahuasca, the main ingredient is DMT,
Hmm.
but it comes with a MAO inhibitor, so it becomes orally active.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's not. You can drink DMT or eat the crystals and nothing happens to you.
Hmm.
Now, LSD, apparently there was a study where they had a look at, I think it was the cerebrospinal fluid, and
Hmm.
whilst they were on LSD, it had a heightened level of DMT. So it might be that
Okay.
when you take LSD, it actually increases the amount of DMT that's being produced, and you know, so
Oh.
there might be also just DMT
Hmm.
of what we experienced there. And psilocybin in magic mushrooms,
Hmm.
that's basically also
Hmm.
just an orally active form of DMT with an extra OH
Hmm.
group, which makes it orally active. So
Hmm.
all these things might come down to just one thing.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I can see that for sure. Um, I've done DMT one time, and it really just felt like a shortcut into astral projection for me. That's all it felt like. And I'm a heavy meditator, and so really for me it was just like, oh, I got there faster. That's it. But some people are like, oh, it's life changing. So I don't know.
I mean, people are different. I've heard of, hold
Yeah.
on, I think it was Ram Dass who was saying that he gave his teacher like a massive dose of liquid LSD, and he just I swallowed
Hmm.
it. Nothing happened to him.
Whoa, now I want to know more about that guy. We got to explore his brain.
He's not alive anymore. I mean, Ram Dass himself
Oh.
already passed away, sadly.
Oh.
But yeah, psychedelics in general, like I say, it's just a different way of getting to the same place. You know,
It is.
there's so many ways to get, to the same place, and it's just a bit different because to have these kinds of experience on your own, just using your own biochemistry, it can be very tricky
Hmm.
and it can take a lot of
It
practice to
is.
get there. But with these,
That's
yeah,
100% true.
but with these things, like you're saying, you can just smoke it and boom, it's in a different reality. And but
Yes,
then you need to do the work afterwards to make use of it.
exactly. Exactly. Well, and we were talking earlier about people who have trouble, being alone with their thoughts and really seeing themselves shutting down their brain, working through their stuff. So I see it as a medicine for people who are having trouble with getting into their heart and soul, that they're taking a medicine, like they're taking an aspirin, right? That's what I think of when I think of magic mushrooms. I think, okay, so it's a medicine, and so they're just getting to the same spot that I happen to get to after 10 years of heavy meditating, and so if you can take a shortcut to that, then go for it, by all means. Have a ball.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a bad reaction to these kind of substances
Yeah,
and all the
that's
rest of
true.
it,
That's true.
it's not for everyone, obviously,
Yeah.
but it can be I- when you were talking in relation to being there with your own thoughts. There's an interesting thing I read about psilocybin and magic mushrooms is that when people take SSRIs, antidepressants,
Yep. Oh
it
yeah.
downregulates the amygdala in the brain.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
basically, it's what it does. It numbs you down, so you don't feel
Yep.
all the negative emotions, but also the positive emotions. You don't feel them as intensely.
Mhm.
So it's definitely not something you should be like on for years with no end.
Yeah.
And it's also addictive and all the rest of it. Lots of side
Oh yeah.
effects. But interestingly enough, magic mushrooms they are way more efficient in actually treating and curing depression. And there were some
Mhm.
studies where even like 1 or 2 doses really alleviated depression, even like a few years later, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the mushrooms actually upregulate the amygdala and its function.
Mhm.
So you feel everything more intensely, but you are also more willing to experience the negative emotions. So then you can work with them.
Right. No, I that you're absolutely true, and I think that's important because if you stuff all of that down,
Mhm.
it doesn't go
Yeah, you
away.
can't escape
It
it.
just creates pressure. No, it's just pressure and pressure and pressure, and then all of a sudden, right, you blow up. But if you take a medicine, a plant medicine, and you work through it, you're going to have that negative experience. You're going to feel that negativity maybe in the moment, but then afterwards, the healing is really, really beautiful.
Yeah, there's so much potential in these
And
things.
actually, there is. Well, actually, ketamine is huge right now. There are clinics where I live, and they're doing ketamine for everything from depression to anxiety, fibromyalgia. They're doing it for pain relief. I haven't done it, but I've heard it's great healing. And people who want plant medicine in the form of cannabis, they're saying, okay, yes, but if it's more severe, then you should try the ketamine injections
Interesting.
beside, in addition to the cannabis. And that's what they're saying now. Some of these recommendations from doctors and pain clinics and things like that.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I haven't tried that route, but I've heard it's fantastic for healing,
yeah,
especially
yeah. I've
pain.
also heard about PTSD. It's pretty good for that.
Yes.
Don't have any personal
Mm-hmm.
experience with that because if it doesn't break down the walls of reality. I'm not really interested.
Yep. I
Yeah,
totally
but it's good that
understand.
it's
Totally
being legalized,
understand.
and there's some good research going on, and you got people who know how to use it, so they can help others with that. So that's pretty good.
It is. It is. It's good to see the transition from, oh, take all of these pharmaceuticals here, have this bag of pills from the pharmacy to, okay, let's go a little bit more natural and let's try plant medicine. I think there's a lot of value in that. And we're just following the East. We're finally just catching up to 5,000 years worth of wisdom from the East.
Oh yeah, that's true. Finally, it's about time.
Finally, it's about time.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this before at some point on podcast. It's quite interesting that these things, even just stuff that you're talking about uh, nowadays in this podcast, most of it was secret for millennia. And it's
Yep.
even if you go like 100 years to the past, no one knew about ayahuasca. It was just
No.
obscure thing somewhere in the rainforest,
Mhm.
and dzogchen and all these other techniques that I read about, like qigong and all the rest of it. It's stuff that I just read when I was in my 20s and I research now. I mean, that stuff barely anyone knew about. But somehow,
Yep.
throughout the 20th and 21st century, it all came out, and it's the perfect timing because this is the time where we need it the most.
It is. Well, and maybe it's our generation who is finally ready. We came here at this time for a reason.
Yeah,
And so we are part of a soul mission, I believe, to help to up level consciousness as a whole and to get to, help to up level the vibes, so to speak, of everybody. And so to share that love and to share wisdom and to do research and to have really good open conversations like this, I think is so valuable because we are doing the work that we came here to do.
yeah, that's for sure. I mean, you can just look around, like what's going on in the world, and you can see that on one side, let's just say the bad guys are just going all out in many ways. I mean, just
Yeah.
listening to some of the stuff that comes from the World Economic Forum. It's not for human or any
No.
any of that, right? And many of these, even just the surge of repackaged Marxism that's going on around, it's insane, right? And it's not good.
It is.
But on the other
No,
side, on the other hand, there's lots of people like you, all the people that have interviewed on my podcast, the you didn't see much of it a few decades ago, right? And it's
right.
more and more of it, and through the internet now we can, communicate like this, put it all out there for
Hmm.
people to see, unedited. It's not small clips that are taken out of context or something like that. So yeah,
Exactly.
fun times for
I think
sure.
it is so. It is. It is. It is so cool.
Yeah,
Well, I think. Oh, can I tell one more
yeah, go for it.
woo woo story? Okay. So when I was pregnant with Maddox, who is now 4, we were trying to figure out what to name him, and we had this long list of potential names. My daughter was 12 at the time, and she burst in the bedroom one night and she said, "Mom, I know what to name the baby." And I said, "No, I know what to name the baby. I just had a dream." She goes, "No, I just had a dream. The baby talked to us. He's a boy, and he said, 'I'm Maddox.'" And I'm like, "No way. I just had the same dream that this baby boy talked to us and said, 'I'm Maddox.'" And we said, "Well, I guess he's Maddox." And my husband said, "I guess he's Maddox." And so he is. But for us to have the same dream at the same time of the exact same thing, that was not in my book. That was not a dream. That was a visit. That was a message. And he was communicating with us, and I thought that was so so special. That was just amazing.
That is special. I mean, dreams are a big thing for me as well. Actually, when I was learning about Tibet and their
Hmm.
stuff, there was a really good book that I mentioned before that was about how the Tibetans use sleep and dream. You know,
Okay.
and they mention different types of dreams in there, the way they categorize them. Each one of them can be lucid or non-lucid.
Hmm.
And you got normal dreams, that you can just interpret. Or actually, they don't put much effort into interpreting the meaning of the dreams. For them, it's just like secondary,
Hmm.
as opposed to the process of dreaming and making use of it. Then you got, I read it in different language, so I guess it will be bright dreams or something like that. Those are the ones where you
Hmm.
can get messages from elsewhere. You can, some teachers from perhaps other realms, they can give you some teachings and things like
Hmm.
these. And then you got dreams of pure white light, right? Just like when you go back to the source. And so I guess that was the second type of dreams that you had.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah,
Most definitely. Have you ever had the third type of dream where you're just in this total white space, whiteness?
I don't think so. Not that I can remember.
I did when I was little, but I haven't as an adult, well, back in the 80s, so we were talking about the past, right? How it wasn't like a thing back in the 80s when you're um a 9, 10-year-old kid talking about this. It was not well received, I'll say that, in the
I
80s.
can't imagine.
So not at all. So I let a lot of my gifts and those things go in favor of being normal and being in the business world and things like that. But then as I've aged and I'm now in middle age and I'm able to say, okay, you know what? Forget it. This is who I am. I can be badass in business and also read tarot cards. I can talk about productivity and also talk about psychedelics. That's okay too, because it goes back to not a balance of work and life, but integration of work and life. And I think that we can accomplish more if we just let go of all that fakeness, all that falseness of, oh, we are so professional and we are talking business. We are big business people. Woo! I think if we could like let all that go, then everybody would be a lot better off. And not employees. Wouldn't employees be so much happier if companies would let go of the stuffiness?
Yeah. Uh,
Anyway, that's off. But
no, you're right. Uh, Just before you said that, I was also like, yeah, it's all just about authenticity, and that's why I just don't give
yeah,
a damn anymore. Like, if I talk about
exactly.
my psychedelic experiences or something, like, it's like whatever. If someone doesn't want to hear
Yeah,
them, hear it, and they can go elsewhere. And
yeah.
another thing is what you were saying. Is just Elon Musk came to my mind. He's like, he's
Yeah.
not a typical CEO, is he? Like, and
No.
I like him, and that's why people do genuinely like him. Because if you listen to an actual longer podcast with him, or you look at his Twitter and like what he posts, it's just a normal
Yeah.
human being. He makes fun
Yeah.
and making dad jokes and
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah. Well, I think that his brain is amazing,
Yeah,
and the balance and how he must sort data in his brain has got to be amazing. Because I mean, can you even imagine? I can't even pronounce some of the things that he just do all day long with his SpaceX stuff between Tesla and all that. So it's amazing. And I don't know anything, much about him personally, and I don't follow the drama and stuff. I stopped watching the news about six
yeah.
months ago, and it was the best thing I've ever done. I haven't
Only
watched
just
a bit
six
of
months
news in
ago.
6 months. Yeah, only just 6 months ago, I had finally had it. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. My soul hurts. And so, no, I tell you what, it's been the best 6 months of my life.
Yeah, I've noticed that before. Like, especially in 2020 when all that nonsense hit. Like, I remember me and my
Yep.
ex were like, looking at like what's going on. But at some point, you just had to take a break from it. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
even now, if I do get some news, it's from other sources. Definitely not mainstream media. There's definitely better
Yep.
ones. Epoch Times that I just recently found they're quite decent.
Hmm.
Or even just someone
Okay.
like Babylon B. The right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more accurate than
Exactly.
CNN most of the
Exactly.
time.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard some pretty funny stuff about, our about our president, and I'll just giggle and hope that he drops the soap. But
Yeah.
but that's about as far as I go with it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if there's something really important out there, it's gonna find its way to you. If you really need to
Yeah,
know, you don't have to
exactly.
like watch everything super closely every day. It's not good for you.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not at all.
Yeah. Wait, when we were talking about Elon Musk, I think it was the first time when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he kind of gave an insight into how his mind works and everything. That was quite interesting to hear.
Hmm.
Because like when he said when he was a kid, he thought there was something wrong with him. Because he said
Hmm.
he would get this stream of constant stream of ideas, constantly, and he
Hmm.
he thought there was something wrong with him. But later, it turns out to be a really good thing.
You're
Yeah.
right. Well, I wonder if he was getting messages from outside of consciousness, and maybe that's where some of his, if he maybe he's a channel and he doesn't realize he's a channel, or maybe he's just super smart.
Well,
But that sounds like channeling.
well, it comes down to what creativity is and where it actually comes from. Because you were saying earlier, you get the best ideas when you take a break from the problem you're trying to solve. And that happened to many people, including scientists, where you're absorbed into doing something, you can't figure it out, you can go do something else, or sometimes even you take a nap and it comes to you in a dream or something. So
Yes,
what's that about, right?
exactly.
So, or even I remember listening to an interview with Tony Iommi, the guitarist from Black
Hmm.
Sabbath, right? And he was like, I don't know where these ideas come from, all these riffs, and when he said
Yes.
when he can't figure it, apparently he can't figure out a solo when he's trying to. He just improvises, and the best improvisation that you know that comes, and that's the one that ends up on the record. So it's this question like, where does creativity actually come from? And I think a similar case as to Elon Musk was Nikola Tesla. Tesla,
Yes.
interesting
Tesla.
coincidence there. Apparently, he was also getting all these ideas from somewhere else. He just came to him, and he did all the prototyping just in his mind. And he didn't have to like go through
Really?
everything, like actually make it and test it. He would all go through everything just in his mind.
Wow. See, that comes from that. I mean, that comes from somewhere. That's got to come from you're channeling from another realm. You're channeling from your higher self. You're getting
Yeah,
messages from somewhere. That's so wild.
yeah, super interesting. All this actually on I can't remember which podcast it was. One that I just recently did. Uh, we mentioned Kerry Mullis, the guy who invented the
Hmm.
PCR test and got a Nobel Prize for it. He said that he wouldn't have invented it without LSD. That's what helped him to get the
Yeah.
idea for it. And
Oh, I believe
yeah,
it.
and I also
100%.
mentioned on the podcast that he might have also had alien abduction type of experiences. Yeah,
Really?
apparently he one time I don't know where he was driving somewhere, but there was a raccoon on the road, and he started talking to him.
Hmm.
It might be green as well. I don't know. But then
Oh,
later on, I'm not sure if you I need to look this up, but it might have been him reading Communion by Whitley Strieber. You
okay.
know the book?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
The cover
I'll
the
have to look it
cover
up.
of it is like super iconic. It's got a gray alien on the front of it.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen
You've
it.
probably seen it somewhere.
Yeah.
The movie is great, by the way, as well.
Ooh.
Although the aliens look super plasticky in it because I think they run out of money for special effects. But overall, a great movie. Christopher Walken playing Whitley. But anyway, Kay, when he was reading the book, and turns out his daughter was reading the same book as well. So I think
Really?
they probably had the same experiences there. And it was
Mm-hmm.
funny also. I think it was his mom or someone from his family. might have been his mom, who sent him an article about how LSD or drugs, I think it was LSD, how they can destroy your brain or something like that. And he responded, "It's too late. It already changed me." Obviously, not in the
I
way
love
how
that.
it was in the article.
Well, weren't they experimenting on people in the 1970s and found that with LSD, people's brains really and their consciousness were expanding, and they were not as easy to control, and they didn't believe the lies that led to like mass control of human beings. And so that's really from what I've researched is what led to psychedelics being illegal, is that it expands the mind so that people won't just follow the status quo anymore.
Yeah,
And we don't want that.
yeah,
We have to have people stay in line.
yeah. That's a big part of it. That's for sure. I mean, like you said, they. I remember reading about MK Ultra, all the horrible stuff that happened there, and they were trying to give it to soldiers knowingly or otherwise, and with the intention to control their thoughts and everything, behavior. But like you say, it just did the opposite.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I mean, there's history of, God, didn't Hitler give a combination of like meth, cocaine, and Adderall to his soldiers that made
Yeah, he
them
was
be
himself on
like
all sorts of
contract killing
stuff. Yeah,
machines?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he was on pretty much
Mm.
everything from all the bad stuff, not the good stuff from from what I read. But that's how he controlled people, is through you know, those substances, through some you put them together in a pill or something. But so yeah, I can see. I think it's all a thing.
Yeah. But something I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned your kids having experiences,
Hmm.
and because that's a bit of an issue when a child has or said something that, like you mentioned, when they had some kind of
Hmm.
experience, they tell about it to someone, by its teacher, parents, whoever,
Hmm.
and let's say the parents, they just shut down, like, oh, that's just your
Hmm.
imagination. So how did you
Hmm.
approach it when you were raising your kids?
Well, first, I'll tell you how I experienced it, because that's what I experienced. So, I grew up in a very small town. We went to a Presbyterian church, which is very fire and brimstone. And I was asked to leave the church permanently at like 9 years old, because I had been in the graveyard just dinking around, and I apparently had messages for people. And I told them the messages, and that was not well received in a church
Hmm.
in a small town in Farmville. That was not well received at all. So I was asked to leave the church after that. And so when my kids showed that they were able to communicate with people from the other side, that they saw spirits, that they had, a gift, I was all about it. I was super excited, and I was like, okay, here's how we nurture this. Now, this is home talk. This is maybe not school talk. So just like if they said a swear, then okay, well, that's a home word. That's not a school word. And so we just talked about the difference between home topics and school topics. So at home, yeah, you can talk about ghosts, and you can talk about that mommy reads tarot cards, but at school, we don't have those conversations. And
Hmm.
and actually my son attends a Catholic school. And so well, but it's close to us. And there's been a lot of gun violence in our state,
Hmm.
really, but in our city. And my daughter has seen so many gun incidents at her school that it doesn't even phase her anymore. She'll be a senior. And so I didn't want that.
Can
Oh, I,
imagine.
I didn't want to do that again.
Yeah.
No, because it's heartbreaking. And so the only school in the area that had not had gun problems was this little Catholic school in our neighborhood. So he goes to Catholic school, and his mom's a pagan.
Hmm.
That's okay. I mean, I think they probably know I have a Lilith necklace, but um, so but you know, I pay my tuition, so he keeps going.
Yeah, you,
But so we just talk about what you talk about at home versus what you talk about at
mhm.
school, and it's super cool that you say that mommy is magic. We just don't talk about mommy's magic at school because the nuns will get mad.
Yeah, yeah, you just gotta do what you gotta do with the school and everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
So your older daughter,
Hmm.
as she was growing up, I guess her gifts didn't dissipate as she was growing up, or did they?
No, when she was 12, she wanted to have a spooky birthday party. We said,
Hmm.
okay, have a spooky birthday party. So I had been very anti Ouija board, I'll say that, because I have had some pretty wild Ouija board
Yeah, I
experiences.
also
But she
heard
wanted a
that
Ouija board.
stay away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But she wanted to give it a whirl, and I had gifted her her first tarot deck, and so she did tarot and Ouija board at her 12th birthday. Well, something came through that damn tarot or that Ouija board, and we have a four-level split house, and her bedroom is the top of the house. Um, a mirror in the basement didn't just break; it burst. This mirror burst. We heard it through the house, and there was force behind it because the shards were freaking everywhere. They were across the basement and the laundry room, and something came in our house. Something did. So we saged and we did a thing and we cleared the house and all of that. But it took me like a couple of days to get whatever that was out. And then she had a tarot reading. She did readings for all of her friends, and then she did a reading for herself that really gave her a scare, and so she didn't touch it for years. And then now, she's turning 17 next week, and just in the last 6 months, 8 months, she's started to get back into it, and she'll be asking questions, and she's been doing her grounding again. So grounding, for anybody who doesn't know, you get outside, you get your feet in the grass, and you just let all of the negativity go back to the earth, and then you feel the light come down through your head, and let the light fill your body slowly, to replace any of the negativity. And that's a really effective method for grounding. So she had started doing that. She's feeling a lot better, and now she is into the getting back into the woo woo again. So I'm super excited about that, because when you have a bad experience, it can scare you away, and
Yeah.
it can stop all those things. But if you block it, then the universe sees that you're not open to receive, and so it stops giving. And then I think you feel kind of lost, and you feel icky, and you feel a little depressed after that, but you don't know exactly why.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, because if you have a small child and just tell them it's all just imagination, or
Mm-hmm.
don't approach it at least with some curiosity, then they're gonna suppress it within themselves. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's literally that it's just
Yeah.
my imagination. It's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken to at this
Mm-hmm.
point quite a few people who were also on my podcast who grew up maybe in a Catholic environment,
Mm-hmm.
being told that this is not okay, and so they end up suppressing these gifts within them, and they end
Mm-hmm.
up depressed and just really
Yeah.
bad state. And it's only when they kind of return to it, like uh, how to say it, when they embraced their gifts,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that's when they start doing a lot better in lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because if you suppress that, then you just have this feeling that something is missing, and then on top
Mm.
of that, you feel like something's wrong with you inside. So of course you're going to feel depressed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hmm.
such an interesting topic. I always love talking about, and totally I didn't expect we end up talking about these things.
I didn't either. I didn't either, but I'm so glad we did.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's fun, and many times it's a relief for people to be able to talk about it. And actually, when I was in San Diego, I ended up we're friends now. Ended up meeting up randomly with someone, and I was the first person she ever talked about her gifts, and yeah,
Really? Oh.
it was quite interesting because
Well, that.
the first evening when we talked about it, so I wear this, you know, and I also
Mhm.
have a ring, so it's only just these two pieces of jewelry that I wear. But she noticed this one, for sure,
Mhm.
and she knew that it was from my grandma.
Mhm. Really?
Yeah, actually, she
Wow.
followed her presents around. I was like, man, and it was also a weird thing because, and this was in a hostel, and she, we just started talking, and she ended up cooking for me, some
Mhm.
food, and then this will be later when you were talking about these things. She was saying that she felt the urge to cook for me, and
Hmm.
the weird thing is that me and my grandma we used to cook together. I would come to a place, and especially later on when she was ill and she wouldn't leave the house, she would just make some rice for me, make some veg, and I would do the rest. And that's exactly
Oh,
what I did with my friend over there in San Diego. Yeah.
really? Oh, that
So
is so
yeah,
cool. So she must have the gift where you can feel something and you can get the message actually from the object. That is a cool gift to have.
yeah. Sort
Very
of.
cool.
It's she. I think she tends to channel the feelings and behaviors of
Okay.
whatever is around, rather than seeing it
Interesting.
visually or something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
super
I love
interesting.
to see how other people experience the world.
Yeah. Whereas Nicole, who was on my podcast, I could tell that she's very visual. When she was explaining things, sometimes she would close her eyes and she said that she sees things.
Hmm.
So I guess many different people experience these things very differently. I personally, it's mostly dreams for me.
Hmm. Yep, it's primarily dreams for me too.
Mm.
In fact, at one point I was having these premonition dreams so heavily, I was trying to figure out how to shut them off because I was just tired all the time. So I found out, shortcut, if you want to turn off your premonition dreams, take a Benadryl. You won't have them. You'll just have normal sleep.
What's that?
A Benadryl is an allergy medicine that makes you tired.
No.
It's a little pink.
Mhm.
I don't know. We have them in the U.S. and it's really, really good for allergies. But it'll also block those premonition dreams for some reason.
That's interesting.
So, hmm so if
Hmm.
you ever just need non-magical rest, Benadryl. All kinds of tips.
It kind of makes me wonder how all these medications that people are taking, how they are suppressing all these gifts
Oh,
within
they
people.
absolutely do.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And you were talking about SSRIs.
Mhm.
SSRIs are known to suppress gifts.
Hmm.
And, they're saying now that a lot of people who were diagnosed as schizophrenic are actually highly gifted, but it has not been fine tuned at all. And if
Yeah.
they were in a rainforest, then they would be a shaman. But because they're in Chicago in the middle of a city, that's frowned upon. So really, it's just so interesting, and I think it's how open somebody is, it's their background and experience, and just how they see the world. And I think we all came here. We all made the decision to come to Earth
Mhm.
at this period of time for a reason. Some people, are still asleep, and some people are starting to wake up. And then there are folks who are fully awake, and those people are so cool to learn from. So cool to
Yeah,
learn
that's
from.
true. That was really, it's really interesting about schizophrenia as well. That I heard the same thing. And I
Hmm.
think there was a study where they actually found increased levels of DMT in the urine of these people. I
Really?
think
I
so.
can,
I
yeah,
think I
I
heard
mean,
something like that.
makes sense.
Yeah. And there was also this other thing. There's this drawing of someone who had schizophrenia, and as it developed, he drew a cat. Right. So at the
Okay.
beginning, it's just like a nice drawing of a cat, but
Hmm.
it just gets progressively more and more psychedelic, literally psychedelic. At the end, it's more like a
Really?
fractal and something you would probably see when you're tripping on DMT or something. It's super interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, the way the brain works.
Yeah. Right. That was super interesting talking to you.
Yes, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Well, do you mind if I just plug my book really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Mm. So this is Are You Okay by Becca Froh. It's on Amazon, and you can also get it on Kindle Unlimited. And really check out the book. Reach out to me. You can reach out to me at getproductive.org or imagineyouacademy.org. I'm under Imagine You Academy on all the socials. So find me, connect with me. I'm going to have to follow you after all this so we can stay connected
Oh, yeah.
because this has just been such a great conversation. And gosh, unexpectedly wonderful. I think really everything happens for a reason.
It sure does. Yeah, I was about to ask you, like, where can people find you
I'm
anyway?
sorry.
But yeah, you already did that.
Sorry.
And I usually ask my guests a few questions before we finish. So, if there was one piece of advice you could give to people, what would it be?
My one piece of advice is to not judge anyone ever. If you see a drug addict, don't judge them. If you see a homeless person, don't judge them. If you see a CEO, don't judge them. Well, maybe judge them a little bit. But so really know that there's so much more to a person than what you see. And if you feel like judging somebody, ask them ask them questions and get to know them and ask them how you can be of service, because I think that's so important in the world, is just to be of service to others. And so if you feel like judging somebody, ask how you can help them instead.
That's great. What do you think is the meaning of life?
Oh gosh, I think the meaning of life is to figure out how to love and to figure out how to love each other and to love the earth. And I think that if you find if you find the love, and you find the love in everything from a leaf to a worm to a person on the street, then yeah, then you are fulfilling you're fulfilling your duty to find what the meaning of life is, because you're finding love and acceptance in everything everywhere, because I think that we are all one. And so you have to realize, yeah, you just have to realize that.
Great. And you already mentioned where people can find you. You guys will find, as always, all the links in the description below. So, it was a great pleasure talking to you.
Yes, it was a pleasure talking to you too. I hope we can stay in touch. You
Yeah,
have
we
just been
will.
an absolute blast. Yeah.
No worries. And if you like this podcast, make sure you give it a like, share with your friends, comment, subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And we'll see you in the next one.